What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and apologies if my voice does sound a bit weird in this video. I have a little bit of a sore throat, but hopefully it's not going to be too bad and I will be able to get through the video. But anyways, in this video, I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Great League with a triple Sand Tomb plus Rock Tomb theme team, where of course Sand Tomb got a pretty significant buff this season, making it a Poison Fang / Brick Break clone, and Rock Tomb got a small but well-deserved nerf, dealing 5 less damage. The team is Shadow Fortress, Runerigus, and a level 50 Sandshrew. And I mentioned this in the video with Guardshot recently, but for me, Sand Tomb and Mudshot, they just don't pair very well together, despite the fact that they were both buffed this season. In this case, I don't think it matters too much because I can't imagine many of you are going to go ahead and build a level 50 Sandshrew and use an Elite TM for Rock Tomb, but for other Sand Tomb users, I wouldn't recommend pairing it with Mudshot. Anyways, I do still think the changes to the two moves are a net positive overall for this team, as it was much easier to use this time around compared to the last time I ran it. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Do you think Scopely got all the nerfs right this season? Are there any moves that maybe weren't nerfed quite as harshly as you think they should have? Maybe some moves that shouldn't have been nerfed but were nerfed, or vice versa, maybe some moves that weren't nerfed at all this season that you think do deserve a nerf? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Shadow Fortress into Altaria. Now, I'm running Bug Bite for this team just because I feel like it does pair quite well with Sand Tomb, as Bug Bites are going to hit incredibly hard once you've dropped their defense a few times. However, I think for the coverage of this team, Volt Switch might be slightly better because, of course, whilst we've all got Rock Tomb here, we've got two ground types in the back that are usually going to struggle up against Flying type Pokemon. So, of course, having Bug Bite does not really help with that coverage. And as well, I saw a ton of Annihilate in the lead. But anyways, in this matchup, you can see just how good Sand Tomb is for the Runerigus, as we're able to connect with one, double shield, and go for a full farm down. However, that doesn't really work out for me, as they've got a Greedent in the back where they're going to double resist the Shadow Claw damage. And of course, Rock Tomb, Sand Tombs, they're not going to deal that much damage. The opponent goes for Trailblaze, but because I went for Rock Tomb first, I debuff their attack stat, allows me to live that. We go for another Sand Tomb, and now we swap into Sandshrew. Now the opponent is just barely going to outpace me to that first charge move. The opponent gonna go for Sky Attack. I can now fire off the Rock Tomb here, and Rock Tomb is of course gonna hit for super effective damage, but Mud Shots are not gonna add up at all over time. And the opponent just barely able to outpace me once again, reaching another charge move. Sky Attack gets the KO there. Now, of course, I'm going to have to come in with the Fortress, but I'm going to need to make a catch. They are debuffed, but Flamethrower is double super effective, so I'm able to swap out, perfectly catch the charge move onto Runerigus, catching the Flamethrower. Even if they went for a full undercharge, that probably KOs. And here I actually just go straight for Sand Tomb, realizing Bug Bite's now going to do more damage. The opponent recognizing they are not going to reach the Flamethrower if they stay in there. They need to clear the debuff, and as a result, they swap back into Greedent, but Greedent has an awful time here. All the charge moves are resisted. They went for Trailblaze first, boosting up their attack stat, but it's not going to help them as we get a full Bug Bite farm down, coming out with the Rock Tomb loaded, and of course, it's super effective. Rock Tomb gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to open there into the next battle. We're going to see a Bastiodon in the lead. So, not that bad of a matchup because we have Sand Tomb, but I've got two ground types in the back. I might as well swap out. And the opponent's going to come in with a second nerfed Pokemon for this season in the form of Gastrodon. So, go straight for Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb actually grabs a shield there. I'm not going to complain about that at all. The opponent going to double shield the Gastrodon. That is a huge mistake on their end. The opponent now going to go and full send the Water Pulse, but we are dealing decent damage here with the Shadow Claws. I'm now going to go for another Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb number 3. Gonna put them into range where we Shadow Claw farm them down before they even reach a second Water Pulse. And now they come in with a Bastiodon just to catch another Sand Tomb trainer. Oh my gosh, they are absolute in shambles right now. We are going to come in with the Sandshrew. I'm just going to no shield this, as of course Flamethrower really not going to deal too much damage. These Smackdowns are dealing honestly like negative damage right now. We can go for Sand Tomb. I actually go for a slight undercharge. It gives me one extra Mud Shot. It doesn't really make a huge difference. They come back in with the Medicham, and actually, are they even on Psycho Cut? No, they're on counter. So the opponent just, I don't think they are quite with the times for this season here, as Ice Punch gets the KO, but we can come back in with a Runerigus. They're already debuffed with a Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb number 2 gets them fairly low. The opponent just going to be fully farmed down there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's when they're into the next battle, you can see Annihilate in the lead. This is a really awkward matchup for me as bug bites are double resisted. So I swap into my Sandshrew and the opponent does not throw straight away. So I'm going to go straight for Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb, you can see, really doesn't deal much damage. And yes, okay, we're going to do slightly more damage with the mud shots, but it doesn't make a huge difference here. The opponent's now going to swap out into Licky Licky. I'm going straight for Sand Tomb once again, recognizing once again it's really not going to do too much damage, but they go straight for a Body Slam, and this should now allow me to reach a Rock Tomb, where of course they're already debuffed in their defense. I can now debuff their attack stat as well. Rock Tomb is now going to do some decent damage. Plus, if they try and commit to a farm down, we can reach yet another charge move. Sand Tomb at this point is going to grab a shield from the opponent, but they get a huge farm down. We come in with the Fortress. They are debuffed in their attack stat and their defense stat by 2 stages, so I'm going to no shield. Unfortunately, they do reach back-to-back Shadow Balls, but that's okay. They're debuffed. I'm going to no shield both of them. They swap back into Annihilate, and I can come in with the Runerigus. Excuse me there. We are going to shield the Rage Fist as I realize I can go for a full Shadow Claw farm down. The opponent's going to come in with their final Pokemon, which is a Jellicent. Now, I'm going to go for the Sand Tomb first because, of course, I want to debuff their defense stat, and then go for the harder hitting Rock Tomb here, which, of course, is also going to debuff their attack. The debuff to their attack isn't really going to make a huge difference in this matchup, as the opponent can still full send a Shadow Ball and get the KO there, but because they full send Shadow Ball, they have to go for 4 more hexes, which means I would easily outpace them. They tried to make a catch there. I didn't have the Rock Tomb loaded, but now I do. So Rock Tomb gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's when they're into the next battle, we're going to see a Beware in the lead. So, not a great matchup for me. The opponent going to be on the buffed low kick this season and potentially on Drain Punch as well. I'm going to no-shield the first charge move as they do go for a Drain Punch. However, I'm now going to go for a Sand Tomb, debuffing their defense stat back to the normal stat. Sand Tomb is going to be no-shielded, and then I tried to catch a Drain Punch here. It does not work out, and they come in with a Pidgeot. Of course, I've got Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb is going to be shielded by the Pidgeot, and the opponent is now going to fire off a charge move. I'm not going to shield this. The opponent is going to go for a Feather Dance, which doesn't really do too much damage. However, it does double debuff my attack stat, meaning Rock Tomb number 2 really not going to do much damage at all. At this point, there's certainly no point in shielding here. They go for another Feather Dance. I'm going to bank the energy, then swap back into Fortress, hoping they would throw. But the opponent, very smart, they just bank that energy. They come back in with Beware, and they go straight for Drain Punch. Again, they're boosting up their defense stat, which means, unfortunately, Sand Tomb won't quite get the KO here. But I'm going to come in anyways and go for that Sand Tomb, as I want to put them into range where I can Mud Shot farm them down. Now, at this point, they haven't revealed that they've got payback, so I'm going to no-shield this. It's a superpower, but I'm able to tank it, and the final Pokemon is going to be Articuno. Now, they should probably predict Rock Tomb coverage here, so I'm going to go for Rock Tomb, but they end up shielding. Maybe I could have baited with a Sand Tomb, because now, of course, they're going to go for an Icy Wind, debuff my attack stat, and whilst, yes, we now know that we can win CMP, because I am debuffed here, Rock Tomb, double super effective, does not get the KO there, and as a result, I realize this game is going to be over. I swap out there. I predicted the opponent would try and snipe with the Pidgeot, but that's actually not what happens, and instead, they can just stay in, reach another charge move, triple axle, gets it. Well, no, never mind, it does not get the KO. The opponent going for some BM play just because they can. Air Cutter gets the KO, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. So, GG's when they're into the next battle against Skeledirge in the lead, so that is not a great matchup for Fortress whatsoever. We come in with the Runerigus, and once again, this is going to be a matchup up against a Mud Boy that we can flip in the 2-shield scenario. Especially if, like we're going to see right now, the opponent is not on Arquitel. They go for Mud Bomb, which does cost slightly more energy this season as well. It does do slightly more damage, but I think is overall a slight nerf to Mud Bomb. Either way, I'm going to shield the next charge move here, and we are now going to look to overfarm just a little bit. You can see these Shadow Claws are really adding up over time. We go for Sand Tomb. Once again, Sand Tomb going to be no-shielded. They come back in with the Skeledirge, and I can reach a Sand Tomb before they fully farm me down. Sand Tomb gonna grab the final shield, and these Shadow Claws absolutely shredding through their HP. I'm gonna have to no-shield this, as what I can't afford to do is shield a Torch Song and then tank a Shadow Ball to the face, but they're actually on Crunch, which is quite strange. Either way, I'm gonna double shield, then go for another Crunch there, which means I can now go for a very aggressive Mud Shot farm down, and their final Pokemon gonna be Morpeko. We can go for back-to-back Sand Tombs. First one does decent damage. This second one gonna do even more damage here. Sand Tomb, super effective. It gets the KO up against the Morpeko, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle, another Annihilate in the lead. So, Runerigus was typically my safe swap for this team. However, up against Annihilate, we can't really swap into it as it is our best answer. But, huge damage. The opponent does not expect a Rock Tomb there. I'm now going to no shield. They could go for an Ice Punch, but instead, they go for Rage Fist, boosting up their attack stat, which honestly might be slightly worse for me just because now they can get a very aggressive farm here, look to overfarm as much as they can. Although, actually, never mind, they don't do that. Instead, they go straight for Rage Fist number 2, and we can come in with the Runerigus. Now I can shield once hit and commit to a full Shadow Claw farm down. So the opponent goes for Rage Fist before swapping into a Tentacruel. But this is fine with me. We can go straight for Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb is super effective damage. And each time we throw it, it's going to deal more damage. So the opponent very likely to double shield right here and now. And then they do exactly that. But at this point, I can now shield. The opponent goes for an Acid Spray. I did think that was slightly too early for a Scald. Either way, doesn't really matter. We can go for another Sand Tomb. They are already double debuffed. Sand Tomb gets the KO. One more Shadow Claw. Gets the full farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see another Annihilate. So, once again, forced to swap into my Sandshrew, and the opponent comes in with a Jellicent. So, we realize we're not really going to deal that much damage here, so I might as well go for a Sand Tomb first, and then go for another Sand Tomb here, just looking to debuff their defense stat. Sand Tomb number 2 is going to get them into the health range, and here I shielded because I thought maybe I'd get to a Rock Tomb before they get to 2 serfs, but unfortunately that is not going to be the case, and as a result, I have to just settle for another Sand Tomb, and Sand Tomb still doesn't quite get the KO. So I'm forced to swap out into Fortress. I don't have to use both shields there because then Annihilate just gets out of control with Rage Fist boost and completely sweeps the team. However, they're probably going to be able to do exactly that anyways at this point, so that is not ideal for me in the slightest. But we go for Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb going to drop the defense there. And honestly, I'm not really sure what to do. I think we come in here hoping the opponent would just throw some energy, but they're not doing that. So instead, we're going to go for a Sand Tomb. They're going to no-shield that, which is quite nice for me. But they are already, I think, double boosted. So I shield here. They go for the Ice Punch. But their final Pokemon is Greninja, and there's not a lot I can do. So I didn't bother throwing. The opponent actually going to go for a Night Slash there, which is sort of okay for me because we can at least tank that. Hydro Cannon would have got the KO. But now I can reach back-to-back Sand Tombs. However, unfortunately, Sand Tomb, whilst it did get buffed in the damage output this season, it's still nowhere near enough to take out a pretty much full health Greninja, and as a result, they can just Water Shuriken, farm down the Runerigus, and I do end up losing that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Clefable in the lead. So, fine matchup for me. The opponent's going to safe swap into their own Runerigus, and this is a bit of a tricky matchup here. So, I'm actually going to stay in. I'm just going to wait for them to throw some energy. I go for the Sand Tomb there, debuffing their defense stat, and then finally, when they do throw, I will now swap into my own Runerigus. What I didn't really want to do is swap out behind on energy and potentially tank a Shadow Ball to the face, and we see they are actually on Shadow Ball there. So, we're going to be able to go for a full farm down. They come back in with Clefable. I'm going for the Sand Tomb first. Sand Tomb gonna drop the defense. Doesn't deal too much damage the first time around, but I should be able to live a Meteor Mash here. So I'm gonna no-shield this. I'm now gonna go for Rock Tomb, and the opponent is gonna stay in with that Clefable. So Rock Tomb gonna be shielded. I'm now gonna swap into Sandshrew, and the opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Clodsire. So you're gonna see Mud Shots and Sand Tombs. They don't really add up that much, even when super effective up against a bulky Pokemon. However, this still is a pretty dominant matchup for me because we are ahead on energy. You can see even here, I'm not going to be able to go for a full Mudshot farm down, so I shield the Earthquake, realizing it's going to do more damage than likely anything from Clefable, and I'm able to catch the next Earthquake onto my Runerigus. So, the opponent is likely going to swap back into Clefable straight away, but we've got so much energy, I might as well start spamming out these charge moves. Sand Tomb, going to drop the defense. We can reach another Sand Tomb before they get to a hard-hitting nuke. So, Sand Tomb is going to grab the final shield. The opponent is finally going to throw some energy. They have to go for Moonblast here. Moonblast gets the KO, but we can just Bug Bite farm them down. We can actually Bug Bite farm down the Clodsire as well, so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I'm going to see Toucannon in the lead. So, this is a really tricky matchup for me just because we are going to be pretty slow to the charge shoes with Bug Bite, and we do have to full send a Rock Tomb. So, the opponent goes for Drill Peck there. They're now going to swap into a Dunsparce though, so that's not too bad for me. And here, I'm going to go for a Sand Tomb. I'm then going to swap into my Sandshrew because, of course, Runerigus does have double resisted Shadow Claw damage. So, we're going to come in with the Sandshrew. The opponent fires off the Drill Run there, and now I'm going to look to overfarm. I am going to shield here because I don't want to get too low to the point where they can just come back in with the 2 cannon and snipe with a couple of pecks. I'm hoping Rock Tomb gets the KO from this range. It's going to be close. It actually doesn't, but the opponent doesn't throw their energy. Maybe just not expecting to live that, and as a result, we're in a decent position here. They're going to come back in with 2 cannon, and they are guaranteed to shield this. So I am baiting. Sand Tomb, gonna be shielded. It allows me to reach a Rock Tomb before they fully farm me down. Do they double shield here? No, Rock Tomb gets the KO. Their final Pokemon is a Shadow Scizor, and I do stay in for quite a while there, but that's just going to allow me to potentially make a catch onto my Fortress, rather than swapping out straight away into Runerigus, where I would be slightly behind on energy. So they actually force in an Iron Head there, which means I probably don't need to make a catch. If they're going for Iron Head, they probably don't have Night Slash. Night Slash, of course, was nerfed this season. They actually no-shield the first Sand Tomb. We get the full Shadow Claw farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to them there, into next battle, we're going to see another Annihilate in the lead. So yeah, we did kind of struggle up against Annihilate in the lead. I should have thrown a bit earlier there, but I didn't. And as a result, they go for a Rage Fist, and they will now outpace me to the next charge. Whereas if I went for that Sand Tomb straight away, we'd actually force a CMP tie with the next charge move. Here, I can't really afford to shield this, just because if I do shield, they just fully farm me down there. So instead, I'm going to no-shield this, going to come in with the Runerigus, but of course, they can just swap out of that matchup, and they swap into Licky Licky. Now, I have the option to debuff their attack stat with a Rock Tomb, so I might as well shield the first charge move, and then, of course, Rock Tomb should put them into eventual range where I can Bug Bite farm them down. So Rock Tomb gonna be no-shielded by the opponent, and now I should be able to tank a Shadow Ball a lot more comfortably. We can go for the full Bug Bite farm down, the opponent not gonna reach another charge move. They come back in with the Annihilate, so I swap out straight away into my Runerigus, but unfortunately met with a Shadow Drapion. I go straight for Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb is gonna drop their defense there. However, they can tank it pretty comfortably, and Shadow Claws, whilst their defense is debuffed, they're not going to add up that much over time as it is resisted. I can call a Aquatail bait, however, which does allow me to reach another Sand Tomb, and now I'm going to shield. I'm hoping my Switch Clock will come up in time, and it is going to do exactly that. But you know what? I'm going to throw the Sand Tomb right now, look to grab the final shield, and I probably should have just swapped out into my Fortress, but I think Annihilate is low enough here where if I go for Sand Tomb, this should put them into Bug Bite farm down range. But no, it doesn't quite do enough damage, and the opponent able to reach a last second charge move. Rage Fist gets the KO, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's upon there into next battle. I can see Shadow Malamar in the lead. A great lead matchup for me. The opponent stays in just briefly to check if we're on Bug Bite, which we are. So, of course, they do swap out into a shiny Shadow Drapion. Now, I'm going to go for Sand Tomb straight away here, and this should be grabbing a shield from the opponent. And then I'm going to swap into my Sandshrew. Now, of course, Aquatail is going to hit for super effective damage here, but we can tank a single Aquatail. And, of course, I am resisting the Poison Sting damage, so I'm never really in threat for them to fully farm me down. We go for Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb gets the KO there, and I should be able to reach a Rock Tomb before they fully farm me down here. So I might as well go for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb is going to connect, and I do expect them to swap out straight away once again, and they swap into their own Fortress. So I'm going to go for a Sand Tomb here. Sand Tomb is going to be no-shielded, and now I swap into Runerigus. Unless they're on Earthquake, I don't really need to respect anything. They go for a Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb is going to drop my defense stat, but of course, they are on Bug Bite. Bug Bite is resisted damage. We go straight for Sand Tomb once again. Sand Tomb going to grab the final shield. I think at this point, I probably should start shielding. I'm going to shield the Sand Tomb. Their Switch Clock is going to come up, and they can reach another charge move here, but I can just shield up the foul play, swap back into Fortress, get the full Bug Bite snipe there. Unfortunately, they barely get the farm down, but it doesn't matter. Runerigus left with a Sand Tomb loaded. Sand Tomb is enough damage to take out the opposing Fortress, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to there into next battle, another Annihilate in the lead here. So not ideal for me. Once again, going to be swapping into Sandshrew, and this time they are going to throw straight away. I'm going to no-shield either way. They go for Rage Fist, which is fine with me. I'm now going to look to overfarm because I can afford to overfarm here. Potentially look to see if the opponent is going to try and make a catch or anything, which they don't do. And they also shield the first charge move, so that's good for me. We can now go for another Sand Tomb. Unfortunately, they're going for a huge low kick farm down. They're going to come out with tons of energy, but they swap into a Shadow Ampharos. So this is fine with me. I'm going to go for Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb going to deal decent damage. And now I swap to catch what I assume to be either a Brutal Swing or a Trailblaze onto my Shadow Fortress. We're able to Bug Bite, farm them down there, and let's see, they come back in with the Annihilate. I can no-shield the first charge move here, but they do have a ton of energy. So the opponent, if they realize we're going to get to a Sand Tomb, which they do, they can throw another charge move, and they might still reach another move up against the Runerigus, and they're able to do exactly that. So I'm going to shield this. They actually go for close combat there, which is quite a smart play because I'm going to shield. They were double boosted or even triple boosted at that point, I can't remember, but also it gives me less farm, meaning I just cannot flip this matchup up against the Empoleon. I shield the Hydro Cannon. I'm going for Rock Tomb here, hoping that this is going to allow me to live a Hydro Cannon, but I am absolutely coping right now. Even debuffed, Hydro Cannon is such a great charge move here. When it's super effective, it's going to take out Runerigus, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle because he's Shadow Ampharos in the lead. So this is fine with me, but we do have two ground types in the back. So I'm going to swap out here, hoping to catch a Brutal Swing onto my Sandshrew. But the opponent went for Trailblaze. What the heck? That would have been into Fortress where it's double resisted. I don't understand that play at all. That is really unfortunate for me, but we do force a CMP tie. So not the worst case scenario, as the opponent also ended up shielding the Sand Tomb there. So that is a huge mistake on their end. We can now come in, go for Rock Tomb, and as we've already seen, Greedent completely walled by the Fortress charge move, so I do not need to shield here. The opponent going to go for a Trailblaze. Again, that is double resisted. They swap back into the Ampharos, and I can outpace to the next move. Sand Tomb gonna be shielded, and we can actually Bug Bite farm them all the way down there. They come back in with a Greedent. I don't know what they've got in the back just yet, so I might as well shield this because I can permanently debuff them either in their attack stat or their defense here. They come in with a Crocodile, and I'm going straight for Sand Tomb. Of course, Incinerate will easily take me out, but now we can come in. We've still got a shield. I'm going to throw straight away. We lose CMP. It makes no difference. We can just safely shield up the charge move. They go for Disarming Voice, which doesn't make an awful lot of sense anyways, but either way, Sand Tomb gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the final battle, I believe, of this video, leading into Galarian Stunfisk. So this is going to be a slightly awkward matchup for me, where we have Sand Tomb for coverage, but our Bug Bites are resisted. So I'm actually going to stay in, wait for them to throw the first Rock Slide. I was going to wait to see if they would go for an Earthquake, but since they went straight for Rock Slide, I'm going to swap and catch the next one onto my Runerigus, where it is, of course, resisted. Now they come in with a Water Gun Barrel, which is one of the worst things we could see, as they are double resisting the Shadow Claw damage and dealing super effective damage with the water guns. However, I'm just going to no-shield this. Surf gets the KO, but of course, I've dropped their defense. These Bug Bites are shredding through their HP. I don't even need to go for Rock Tomb. Sand Tomb doesn't quite KO, but it does allow a farm down. They're going to come back in with the Galarian Stunfisk. I'm going to go for the Sand Tomb, and then I'm going to look to make another catch of the Rock Slide here onto my Sandshrew, and I'm able to do exactly that. The opponent, I'm going to go for Rock Slide, which is resisted. They come in with their final Pokemon, which is a Spark Lantern, and that is fine with me. We've got Mudshot and Sand Tomb, and whilst yes, it's not the strongest combination, over time it will start to add up. So of course they shielded the first charge move, meaning this next Sand Tomb is going to deal more damage. Sand Tomb number 2 still doesn't really deal that much damage. The opponent recognizing they kind of had to let one of them go through, so they had to let that one go through. But either way, I'm able to catch a Surf. The opponent is going to try and make a catch of their own, but I farm up to back-to-back Sand Tombs. Sand Tomb will be enough damage to take out the Stunfisk, and I don't need to bother throwing here. Of course, all I can do here, shield up the charge move as they go for a Surf, go for the Mudshot farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.